What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleashed, the weekly panel discussion show. And surprise, surprise, for the second week in a row, we actually have a guest. I didn't feel quite right being on here with superpowers, potentially by myself. So I had to find someone else who woke up with the glow. My man, the colleague of mine at the Body Lock, good friend, Matthew Wells. Matt, what's going on, my man?
Not much, man. I'm enjoying these superpowers, like you said, man. I got the glow like Bruce Leroy today. I'm feeling fantastic. So glad to be back on with you distinguished gentlemen.
Man, it's a good day to be a vigilante. So let's keep it pushing right here with the intros, and we're going to introduce the jack of all trades who's mastered them all, the senior editor of SureDog.com, my man, Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on?
Well, aside from this being the day of which I've lived in fear for my entire life, I'm doing pretty well. We've got the last big UFC card of the year to talk about. On a personal note, my wife got the COVID vaccine today. No, this is not a White House photo op. She is a nurse who's worked on a COVID unit since March, so just it's a relief that we won't be quite under the same amount of stress and fear all the time.
Well, definitely happy for your household on that one. I know you guys have been on edge for 10 months, so I'm glad to see some relief going on your way. And I can't wait for the anti-vaxxers jumping in the comments as well. And of course, the panel every week is anchored by the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers, who might have Mike Perry's 2% because he's looking a little bit different today. Mr. J. Petru. Jay, what's going on?
Woke up with a glow today. I don't know what's happening, but I'm just rolling with it. You know how we do. Let's get right down to it, though, because the stat of the week is definitely the most important thing for me as a SureDog play-by-play guy, and for a lot of us that are just grinding down to the nub from this event schedule that we've had here. 24 is the stat of the week, and y'all know why. This past fight card this weekend, Fight Night 183, put an end to a stretch of 24 consecutive weekends of UFC cards, which is twice as many as we've ever seen ever in the history of pretty much any major MMA. The past record was 12 weeks last year. 24 weeks, and we're finally done. Feels good.
Yeah, for someone who is constantly doing the play-by-play for SureDog, I know this feels particularly wonderful for you. I actually, right after the event, I hit up Oscar Wells, a good friend of the show. You know him from his work with the Mac Life, and asked him, like, you're actually going to enjoy a little break. And then I forgot that Conor is fighting in January, and he just laughs like, yeah, break. A welcome time of relief for a lot of people in our work. So the UFC had a pretty busy, event-filled 2020, but of course they decided to end things with propaganda, the likes of which we have never seen before. Dana White on his Twitter account released a video that was one of the most masturbatory things I've ever seen in my life, and it was all about how they essentially beat COVID. Like, they were the mavericks in the sporting world, and they brought peace and positivity. And those evil journalists that tried to shut down fun, tried to shut it all down. I know I felt personally offended by this video. Not because journalists, some of which I consider friends or at least colleagues of mine, were attacked, because I wasn't included. I've been just as critical as all these other guys. I want to have my picture on there like I'm FBI's most wanted. What's up with that? Fellas, what was your first reaction when you saw this video?
Pretty much.
Man, I don't know if I think there's probably a word in German that will best define this feeling of the enjoyment of actually laughing out loud to seeing this and going, there's no way this is an official UFC video. This can't be real. But then I realized, it's 2020, propaganda, all these things. Okay, yeah, this is pretty much par for the course. This is like the cherry on top for the crap Sunday we've had this year. What possessed the UFC to decide, let's run this as a unit together? because this wasn't just Dana who spoke and did whatever. This was a concerted UFC production team that did research to source all the information and pull the clips of everybody and the black and white most wanted pictures. If you do this, then they will raise your taxes. Kind of just the evil campaign ad look of the people that are involved. It was absolutely sensational. I mean, like this is an attack ad. But we're in the fight game. Why do we need an attack ad?
They made Alex K. Lee look like a fugitive.
They made Alex K. Lee like a villain.
One of the most harmless, nicest guys you'll ever meet in your life, and they turned him into a supervillain. This was fantastic. Like I saw some takes on there about how problematic this sort of thing is, and it's very problematic. Attacking the media when you've clearly been avoiding regulation and oversight throughout the year. That's the story of the UFC in 2020. But man, I do love a good old-fashioned laugh. That shit was hilarious. And quite frankly, I'm here for more. I'm sorry. I'm here for more. I can't wait to see part 2. I hope I'm evil enough to make part 2.
You're a mean guy. So I gotta think that
dude, you will always have, well, who's going to pay my taxes?
Man, but
you'll always have that.
Yeah.
I will always have that, but I didn't get the highlight package like that. I didn't get they didn't put my height, on the little scale behind me and the numbers across my chest.
You're probably better off though. You're scarier without the height thing behind you.
Well, you know what?
Sorry.
You know what? I'm gonna, Ben, I'm not gonna use my powers against you. I like you.
Oh, the savagery.
All right, fellas. So I know we have a lot more to talk about, but there's no way we could start the show off, especially the way we operate. There's no way we could start the show off without addressing the video. I've said my piece on it for the time being. Anything else you guys want to add before we move along?
I want to ask a question to I always do the angles wrong for you guys. Yes. Anyway, what was the point of this? What do you think was the goal? Like the UFC by pushing this out, said that we were right. We did it. Mission accomplished. This is the mission accomplished video.
Yeah, that's what this was.
To who? What that's what I mean, Matt. Why?
To himself. Whom? It was completely self-congratulatory. It had no other purpose other than to give the UFC's multimedia department something to do on the week that there's not an upcoming card. Like we're talking about what we're going to do this coming week. They're going to make a video hagiography for Dana. Even being as familiar as I am with the history of the UFC's PR efforts and their relationship with the media, I work for an outlet that was blacklisted for 5 years. Dana still ain't let go of his grudge against Josh Gross, apparently. Oh even so, I watched this thing and I was like, this cannot be real. I had my hands clapped to the side of my head like Home Alone, going, this is a parody, except that Dana's the one who tweeted it out. Otherwise, it was a parody. The problem is, it's not for anybody but themselves, because the fan base, the space, has already made up their mind. There are fans out there that think everything the UFC does is wrong, and outlets like Sherdog are just giving one championship the shaft. And then there are people that will just cape for Dana at the expense of the fighters that are actually providing their entertainment product. I don't have the power to change their minds. I don't think Dana does either. This video was for himself. But
it's the snow in the driveway. Why?
This was like the equivalent of celebrating a championship game by going streaking through their quad, butt ass naked, because that's all this was showing their ass. Like they probably got sat down with the execs from ESPN and were like, hey, you guys did it. You completed the year. You had your final event. Congratulations. You hit your targets, whatever. And somehow this is the way they wanted to shine light on that. We said, fuck COVID and fuck everybody asking us questions. We did it. With no mention of all the people that have died, all of the fighters that have been affected, your former lightweight champion's father who died from this thing. No mention of any of that. It was just fuck everybody. We did it. God damn it.
Yeah. Also, there was curiously no mention of the UFC was blaming Alex K. Lee, Josh Gross, and Brian Campbell, among others, for trying to shut them down, when it was actually Gavin Newsom's call to the executives at Disney that were the final, just final nail in the coffin for one of the iterations of UFC 249 that was supposed to take place at Tachi Palace. Yeah. So, I mean, did you put Gavin Newsom in this little lineup? Did you put the Disney executives in this lineup? It's kind of like what were you intending to do other than own the libs on Twitter? That seems to be the only thing that accomplished, besides give us something really, really funny to laugh at.
I think that it's a really good point. Is that the blame was all on the media. It was specifically the media. Remember, you heard how many specific devoted sentences. The media is in the business of negativity. The media click. The media doesn't make any of these calls. The media doesn't do any decisions. They don't flip the switch. UFC Tachi Palace, yes or no, was not because I decided, I don't think this event should. There was nothing that media could do. The media didn't petition as an MMA JA could theoretically do to say, hey, we as all the journalists covering the sport say this is a bad idea. If this happened and that reached like Dianne Feinstein, who sent the letter to Gavin Newsom, maybe theoretically there's blame on the media that cover the sport. But to this point, it's a strange scapegoat that I don't see an end game for. Like this doesn't make things better, I think, is what made me so surprised by it. This was not a fence-menting video. This is a victory lap at the expense of whom? Like the stat of the week, I was this close. If I wasn't so relieved about the cards all ending, the stat of the week was going to be, as of December 7th, we officially know of 40 UFC fighters that have tested positive for COVID. Officially, not including their corners, not including their coaches, their family, loved ones that have passed from it, nothing. Just in terms of actual fighters on the roster, 40 of them as of December 7th. So there's just, I don't know. There's so many questions. There's so many issues I had just conceptually. Like, this is pure propaganda at its absolute, if we're being nice about it. And I'm surprised, Mr. Falcons.
Dude, one thing I thought about this as I was, there's a ton of takeaways that I could break down, every 5-second segment of this video and just go off on it, right? But from the very beginning, when they're doing the voiceovers and they're showing the headlines of the articles and everything, you could just as easily replace those articles that they were showing with actual real world examples of how COVID was affecting the planet.
Yeah.
Not just how it affected MMA and MMA journalists or blah, blah, blah. How about highest unemployment in history? How about, untold number of people dead, all that kind of thing, businesses being shut down. You could have easily replaced all of that. But the thing that really kind of irked me a little bit was the fact that, Dana had this quote in there where he was like, I didn't do this to make money. I did this so I could employ for all my employees so they could get paid and all this stuff. Well, then why in the hell was this? How long was this video? 6 minutes, 7 minutes? Why was this? Why was this 100% focused on Dana White? This video should have been a spotlight shined on all the fighters and all of the employees who put themselves in harm's way every single week. Dana White's face should have been nowhere on this. If it's really about caring about the fighters and their well-being and the employees of the UFC.
0 jobs lost, except
for
the ones that aren't employees.
Yeah, this was tone deaf by the widest margin possible. It's offensive to the point of hilarity. Where you go so far over the top that all you really can do is laugh. Like I was in tears laughing at this because it's just that bad. It's just that ridiculous. It's just that asinine. It really accomplishes nothing worthwhile. I just want to know the only thing I can't really say I really want to know this, but I mean, just kind of curious, like who had the biggest nut off of this? Was it Dana or Jake Shields? I don't know. A lot of low IQs in celebrating this video as some sort of triumph when you have Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov unfortunately, in his grave. Rose Namajunas bowed out of UFC 249 because she had to put family members in their graves. There have been a bunch of fighters that have tested positive. Cody Garbrandt right now, despite his IG stories claiming that this is all a hoax, actually has real things that are lingering in his body right now as a result of catching COVID-19. Geoff Neal, who we're going to talk about in a second here, supposedly had COVID and was damn near congestive heart failure because of this. Man, I didn't see him in that video in his hospital bed. So I'm really not understanding what the goal here is beyond, trying to shine up Dana's boner. That's pretty much the only thing that was accomplished there. And man, I don't know, fellas.
I got one question if we can linger on for just a second longer. Which was a more tone deaf message? This 5-minute video, the chest puffing, the mission accomplished, or the one championship email that was 2 paragraphs long that was thrilled to announce it had cut 40% of its workforce and fired a whole bunch of people and added a war chest in this time, and which was a more tone deaf thing in the scheme of things.
Much as I enjoy dunking on one championship, this video is all time. Like, Dana just reminded everyone that he is the pettyweight GOAT by a wide margin.
Just dunked on Scott Coker there.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Like, it's not even close. He just came and reestablished his dominance as the most petty public figure on the entire planet. It is ridiculous. I mean, it's just, for a guy who just wants to present himself as like, I'm the Maverick. We didn't give a fuck. We made this sport because, we just had the balls. Like, the condo inside his head is so full of people living rent free.
Yeah,
like,
Josh Gross has
call out like
Big
John McCarthy and Jimmy Smith.
All right, it's so true though. Yeah, I mean, he used it as an opportunity to really just shit on people that question anything with any sort of merit whatsoever. Like the fact that he showed that they had Josh Gross's face on there at least 5 different times. I was like, my God, dude.
Yeah,
from an audio clip that was in April when the UFC was floating the idea, by the way, of Tachi Palace and all these things. This was not a yesterday, this past week response to COVID either.
Completely ignoring like the change in the media.
Yes, from
March and April until now, like completely ignoring that. Like even if if you go by just this show alone, when all this was first going on, and Matt, I believe you were a guest during that time too. So I'm sure you were a part of this discussions, and of course we talk almost every day just in general. So I know we talked about a lot of this too, just between us. But like, wow, when this first was starting up and Tachi Palace was being floated out there, and they were going through all these different iterations of foolishness to keep this going on, and I started that UFC Yacht in International Waters hashtag and all that. Like, it was beyond comprehension how ridiculous, how just off the beaten path, and just how stupid it had all gotten, and how dangerous. We're not just talking about watching fights in a bubble. Like, there are these lives going on right now, some of which are no longer here, unfortunately, and we're all dealing with navigating a different workforce. We're all wearing masks going into the grocery store, which, by the way, you can't find any damn toilet paper to save your life. So you're dealing with these real life consequences to what's going on, and that obviously is going to influence the way we think about something that we don't need in our lives, and that's cage fighting, a recreational activity, which, as much as we love it, and make no mistake, to anyone who seems to think MMA media is out there to shut down the sport, fucking idiots. We do this because we love the sport of mixed martial arts. I can tell you this, it does not pay well unless you are one of maybe 10 people in the world. From a media standpoint, you're not making a lot of money doing this. Instead, you're sacrificing a lot of time. You're staying up ridiculous late hours. You're sacrificing pretty much every weekend that you ever thought you owned in order to talk about and to write and to report on something that you love. So the last people in the world that want to shut down mixed martial arts or mixed martial arts media, the last people, you fucking idiots. Like, I don't know how stupid someone has to be to really think this. Like, you must have the IQ of a fucking garden salad if this is really how you think. Ranch dressing is smarter than you, motherfucker. If you really think that we love this sport enough to cover it, enough to sacrifice so much of our lives to watch, endless parade of fights every fucking day, and tape study and just language and grammar that we're fighting with to try to then research and stats and all these things that we have to keep up with to do this properly, to create content for all the fellow people that love the sport to consume. If you think that we've decided all of a sudden, let's shut it down because we don't like fun, you fucking idiot. Please do us all a favor and jump off a bridge. That is the best thing you can do. You will clean up the gene pool. You'll make the world a better place. Please do that. I'm so perplexed by the lack of thought in here. Now, if you want to just go out and lick Dana's boots, go ahead, lick away. I'll, go to a sex shop, get you some flavored lube, and just put it all over the boots, spice it up for them a little bit. Wear your red panties while you're at it. But don't get in this field with people who really think. This is not you, fam. It's not you. This is not your lane right here. Your lane is to be a dummy. Be a dummy. Keep being a dummy. Say dummy things while we out here being intelligent and we're actually putting thoughts together. You fucking idiots. Please jump off that bridge. Please find that bridge. Just hop off, man. We don't need you, fam. It's all good. It's all good. I feel better now.
Yes.
It's not usually my line, but bars.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and talk about this sport that we're trying to shut down here. There was an event Saturday.
Failed again. Damn it! They had another card last weekend.
24th week in a row, guys. We must be doing something wrong.
I'm we got twirling my mustache. Like, damn it!
We have to change our approach because somehow or another, despite all our efforts to stop this from happening, Wonder Boy Thompson and Geoff Neal fought in a 5-round main event, and I guess January we're going to try again to shut the sport down, but the UFC has officially shut its doors for 2020 unless any more propaganda videos come out. Wonder Boy's victory over Neal, fantastic, like shut him down. My scorecard was 50-45, like he completely shut him out. I believe was that the unanimous scorecards?
Yes.
I had to get my son out the bath when the scorecards are being read, so I missed that part. Didn't bother looking it up either. What are you going to do? So fellas, now I'm going to start out with our swing or miss here for this week. Wonder Boy's victory, swing or miss. Was it better overall for the UFC than had Geoff Neal won?
Yes. This was a win-win. It was a good matchup. Good example of matchmaking. But of the two outcomes, Thompson is 10 years older, so he has less of a window to get back into title contention. He is more of a known name, more of a known quantity. It's good to have him back as far as the UFC is concerned. Because the thing is, Neal is 27. No, is he 30?
31,
Neal is somewhere between 27 and 30 years old, and still very much on the way up. His game is still improving fight by fight. He has time. This will not be his last incursion into the welterweight top 10 or 15. He may still have a title contender run in his future. Thompson is on a much shorter clock, so relatively speaking, yeah, it's good. One of their more, he might be the pound for pound nicest guy in the UFC, and he's back. Someone who's been in that title picture before tends to have a quicker route back to title contention. So, yeah, either outcome would have been good. But it's probably slightly better for the UFC that Thompson won.
Matt, I'll kick it to you. I know you're very familiar with the team at Fortis MMA. What are your thoughts on there? Was Wonderboy Thompson, is that a better outcome for the UFC, or would Geoff Neal have been better?
For the UFC as a business right now in 2020, it's better that Wonderboy won this fight. But of course, as you mentioned, me being familiar with the Fortis team and everything like that, training there and everything and being friends with these guys, I absolutely hate that he lost this fight. But that's not the question. The question is it better for the UFC? It's better for the UFC because, like, to the points that Ben just made, everybody knows Wonderboy Thompson. Not as many people are familiar with Geoff at this point. So a Wonderboy versus Usman match sounds fantastic right now for the UFC and when they're trying to sell pay-per-views. So for the business side, great. For other reasons, I absolutely hate that Thompson won this fight.
Totally understand that. Jay, what are your thoughts on this matter?
You know, I think this is actually a positive net outcome overall. I'm swinging on this, that Wonderboy won, not just because of the fact that that the UFC can hope to sell more by putting a more established name on top of a billing, but in terms of actually developing the fighters, because sometimes a good, respectable loss to a top shelf guy makes that fighter better. Like, I'll give you an example. Geoff Neal landed more on Wonderboy Thompson than anybody ever has. Like, this is, even though he lost all 5 rounds, Geoff Neal actually landed more strikes on a guy who doesn't take strikes. So this was even though going into, I mean, Geoff Neal had a lot going into this fight, of course, a lot of issues and adversity before and during the fight. But this is a growing opportunity. This is an improving opportunity. And this is something I think that will make Geoff Neal a better fighter. If he had walked down Stephen Thompson, like some of us thought, I actually expected that for some reason, possibly because of the age of Wonderboy, the layoff, the fact that karate styles don't really last when you get older because your ability to slip and counter, that type of speed kind of fades on you. He didn't have any issues with that. If Neal had walked him down and punched him out, that's a good thing. And okay, great. But then he just moves up and the Wonderboy's out of it. And that's probably the last you'll hear of Stephen Thompson. Whereas Thompson's a cemented top 7 guy, and Geoff Neal is still a guy on the rise who had a competitive, I still was a competitive fight. I mean, it was a 50-45 that I enjoyed watching. You know, there's 50-45s and there's 50-45s. You're like, oh, you almost want them to throw in the towel, like a boxing match over this weekend, either of the 2 big boxing matches where there's clear levels. And you're like, they could stop this. We know what's going to happen. Even though I knew that Wonderboy was going to be able to cruise to that decision, I still wanted to see what Geoff Neal could do. Could he adjust? Could he do this? So, yeah, I think this is a overall net gain for everybody, and I'm okay with it.
I agree with the whole win-win scenario because I think both of these men are quite promotable guys. I mean, Wonderboy obviously already has a pretty big fan base. Geoff Neal is also a guy I think you can get behind. More people knew his story. They certainly would get behind him. As a former restaurant worker, I certainly support what Geoff Neal's all about here. But also, I think unfortunately, we kind of have to bring this subject up every time we're talking about certain big name fighters. From the UFC's perspective, it might be better for Geoff Neal to have won this fight. I say that because he was given $130,000 to show. Geoff Neal was given $39,000 to show. When you're talking about the way they're cutting, they're cutting higher paid stars, Wonderboy fits right in line. And I see a world where, although we love watching him, he's consistently entertaining and consistently puts on performances that earn bonuses, that get praised by the bald man at the podium. There is a clear push for some of these people to leave the roster so they can bring in the cheaper talent. And Geoff Neal, coming from the Contender Series, fits that bill perfectly.
And it's a really good point you raised too, because in addition to the UFC wanting to cut higher paid fighters, the UFC is wanting to cut fighters that had their shots at the title. They had one or more or whatever, and they couldn't get there. So the UFC goes, okay, you had year 6. I'm calling it the Liz Carmouche effect. In the title challenger, couldn't quite get it, fell short. Okay, done. Joe Benavidez is the kind of guy who's going to get that. Thompson with a loss and a draw to Tyron Woodley is that kind of cat. So yeah, I can see that too.
Yeah. So
do you know how quick one championship would pick his ass up? Like he is what they think Sage Northcutt is.
Yeah.
Like just this blonde comic book character looking karate guy.
Like he would definitely be a star of a one championship movie.
He's the honor and respect that one championship claims to represent. So
I'd buy that T-shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, like even the UFC can't do anything but like show him teaching 7-year-old kids karate lessons and driving the church bus around like in his promo reels, because that's what he does.
But the UFC can also put out on Twitter, fun fact, Geoff Neal was a waiter and had to go back to his waiting job because he wasn't making enough money to live. Fun fact.
Yeah, that's fun. Hilarious. Like, wow. Tone deaf. So tone deaf. All right, fellas. So speaking of roster cuts, I think we have to mention another name that could be on the chopping block. One, Greg Hardy. To the delight of MMA Twitter overall, Greg Hardy found himself on the wrong end of a TKO to Marcin Tybura. Now, he's got a high base salary. He's got a checkered history just in the UFC. Now we're talking about his prior issues when he was in the NFL. But as far as mixed martial arts is concerned, quite the checkered history of fouls and disqualifications. Now, do you think Greg Hardy is going to survive these massive roster cuts that we're anticipating at year's end?
I feel like I want to flip a coin on this. Like it's clear he's on a one fight skid. I mean, he lost his last fight. That is the extent of it. And UFC doesn't usually, unless they're named, Yushin Okami, Jake Shields, some of those names in the past, won't be as prone to just kind of jettisoning a fighter, let alone a heavyweight. When there are 40 of them, maybe. I think UFC heavyweight is probably one of the lightest, lowest populated on the roster, I think. So, I mean, high pay, hasn't panned out, hasn't done anything of merit. His wins aren't spectacular like you want them to be, like you figure he walked down and punched somebody out. When your best win like that is Dmitry Smolyakov, who the UFC cut and brought back for him to lose again, and you don't want to see what has happened to him since leaving the UFC because it hasn't been pleasant. It's the kind of guy who the UFC took a chance on him and hoped that he would pan out and bring the ratings, which hasn't happened, and bring the views and bring the attention clicks and the controversy to it to say, oh man, Greg Hardy, I want to see him lose. Oh yeah, I'm rooting for that guy. He played football. Hasn't really brought that. The people have forgotten, and that's really unfortunate that the narrative has kind of diminished over time. The more fights he has, the community goes, well, here we go. It's another Greg Hardy fight. This showed as clear of any fight he's had his absolute ceiling. And that's too bad, but he's still better than several heavyweights on the roster. So he's probably going to kick around for a while.
I do find it interesting that he looked pretty damn good up until when he got knocked out. Like that, let's get that out there. He looked very, very effective until he didn't. So, Matt, you think we're going to see another Greg Hardy performance in the octagon?
I strongly believe he'll be back, and I have a few reasons why. First, he attached himself to the right team when he joined MMA. He's an American Top Team who has great relationships with everybody at the top of the ladder when it comes to, UFC brass. And of course, he's attached to Dean Thomas, who is very good friends with Dana White. So if Dean has any say or any sort of pull in whether or not that decision can be swayed, I'm sure Dean will put in a good word to keep him around. So that's one reason. Another reason is look at what he's done after every loss thus far. He's rebounded with 2 wins. So judging by what he did in the first round of this fight, where he did look really good, he looked really sharp, he's moving around, but then you could tell he still hit a wall in the second round. He started getting pieced up, and you can credit that to adjustments by Tybura, whatever have you, him getting fatigued. Maybe it was a combination of both, we don't know. But so far throughout his UFC tenure, he's bounced back with 2 wins each time. Would have been 3, if he didn't have the inhaler thing, the first time around. So I think that they'll keep him around at least to see what happens in the next fight. If he goes out and scores a knockout victory, then hey, we'll keep him around and, you know, maybe try to justify his high pay. But yeah, I think they keep him around at least for one more and see what happens in the next one. And don't expect it to be a name that a lot of people are familiar with either.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. The name of his next opponent is going to be very telling as to what the UFC wants to do. If they pair him up with someone who favors a wrestling attack, I think that's going to say, yeah, I think we're ready to get this guy up out of here. Seeing how almost clueless he looked once Tybura got him to the floor. He looked once he got on his back, it looked like he literally had no idea what to do and responded like you'd see people respond in street fights to that situation. I think that's going to say a lot. If they put him in there against a guy who isn't known to take you down, who's going to want to stand and trade,
like a John Vellante.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, if we put him up against a John Vellante, I think, well, okay, we're trying to get this guy a win. We're trying to give you another chance to develop here. And keep in mind too, developing. I think that's a big thing to remember. He was a recipient of a developmental contract with the Contender Series. So at least in the past, it has been recognized that he was not a finished product, and the UFC kind of extended grace to him to fill in some of those gaps. So we'll see if they're willing to do that again in the near future. Now,
while you're on that point, let's cut you off.
Yeah.
But while you're on that point, it's still very smart of him to always remind people of that after every win and loss. I'm still developing. I'm not a complete product yet.
Yeah.
So that's something that
is the 8-fight UFC veteran.
Yeah, exactly.
32 years
I'm still a
young,
rookie of this game. Come on,
a whole
guys.
career behind him in another sport. Yeah, I've only been doing this for a few minutes.
yeah, but I think he can get away with saying that, and it makes more sense considering the level of opposition he's faced. Like Tybura is really the only like UFC caliber fight. Well, Alexander Volkov, of course, but those are the only two UFC caliber heavyweights he's fought. Everyone else been people who you probably are more likely to see at a regional show. And in the case of Smolyakov, like they brought him in off of a meat wagon to go in there and just get annihilated like that. He served no other purpose but to lose. And what he won his way back into the UFC by beating someone who was like 2-10 or something foolish like that. Like
It was a sub 500 fighter. Yep. Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah, so that's sort of, we have to look toward those clues as to what the UFC wants to do with him if he's back in the octagon. I think he will be, even with these roster cuts going on. The dogmatic approach to promoting him, it just stinks of Dana's stubbornness, and I don't see him letting that go. To like do the right thing. So here's
the same line. Like he's gonna make a Greg Hardy video, like in the same vein of the fuck COVID video.
Yeah, Greg Hardy wins.
Criticizing Greg Hardy.
Greg Hardy wins a split decision over John Vellante, and we're gonna get a celebratory video about how he turned into this world beater from a developing prospect and scorned by the NFL unfairly. All right, fellas.
There's something I just real quick want to know, and I think Duffy probably is a good guy to answer this. Who does Greg Hardy fight next?
I don't even think they can go to a meat wagon. They're going to have to find like a wagon of potatoes and turnips for the next one.
KSW guy.
Just the level of defense he showed on the ground was like single digit UFC level of defense. The last time I saw something that bad, the guy had one boxing glove on. And while he's gotten better in some areas, his striking has improved. His gas tank has gotten worse. I've stood in the same room as a shirtless Hardy a year and a half ago, and the guy had damn close to a six-pack. First thing I saw when he came out this weekend was Hardy looks huge. He cannot walk around at 300 pounds and almost miss weight at heavyweights without. I mean, he's never going to beat even a top 25 heavyweight, looking like he does now. And that compounds everything. It makes his ground game worse. It makes his striking not as smooth as it could be. Like he didn't look good. And it's a shame because I said ahead of this that Tybura was obviously a strategic matchup because he's pretty much the highest ranked heavyweight that Hardy had this clear a shot at beating. it's hard to find a top 15, top 20 heavyweight without knockout power and without a great chin, and who's not a terribly fast starter. Like, this was all set up for Hardy to blow through in the first round, and he didn't do it. It's a shame. I don't think he'll be cut, and it's for the very reason that Ant said. I remember when Dana finally got tired of hearing the questions about Hardy in his past, and he just snapped. He's in the UFC, get over it. And that's coming from the man least capable of getting over things on this entire fucking planet. This is a guy that has, like, nursed a grudge against Josh Gross for 15 fucking years. But I guarantee you that Dana does not forget that moment. And because he was forced to put his foot down and just come out completely in support of Hardy's presence in the UFC, Hardy is going to get every possible chance to make good on it before Dana admits he was wrong.
Well said. Well said. All right. So let's move on now to one fun segment, and that's eating crow. Grab your seasoning salt, grab your Old Bay, grab some black pepper, whatever you like to season your food, grab it, because it's time to have some deep fried crow. Matt, what is your eating crow moment for the week?
Expecting decency from this promotion. I guess I could go with that. I don't know. I guess I can go with that as my eating crow, because still I'm just so dumbfounded by that whole thing today. Man, I don't know. No, but in terms of what I expected differently from this past weekend, I have one, my main one I want to save for later in the show, right? So I will just say the one that surprised me the most on this past UFC card was Khaos Williams and Michel Pereira. And the way that he approached that fight, Michel Pereira said, screw all the annex until I have a nice little safe lead, and then I can do a little capoeira in the third round on you. But the way he approached that fight and the way Khaos Williams was all but shut down did kind of surprise me.
You know, actually, I wasn't too surprised by that. I said this on the Body Lock chat for the tailgate show. I was too busy watching Ozark to get on it on time, so I just jumped in the chat.
Good show, by the way, in case you haven't watched it.
Fantastic show.
Shove it, Jay.
You should definitely put it on your playlist.
You know, I have no friends. So I did think like that had a very real possibility of being a boring fight. I wouldn't call it really boring, but it certainly didn't meet our expectations of calamity that we thought it was going to be. Jay, what was your eating crow moment?
You know, there was a decent amount of crow to be eaten, but I'm going to drop down to the prelims for something I didn't expect that would happen. You know, Pannie Kianzad and Sijara Eubanks are two top 15 women's bantamweights who are trying to find their place and work their way up a division that has a lot of space to move up there. There's several old names who have gotten a bunch of title shots and lost them all. So there's a very clear spot to move up in the rankings. Now, with respect to Sijara Eubanks, I know she's not a world beater, but I thought she had the style set to frustrate and to outwork Pannie Kianzad for at least 2 good rounds. And that happened until it didn't anymore. And that was the most interesting thing to me, that I the first round happened and Eubanks had the advantage and she got the takedowns and she nullified Kianzad enough and didn't get hit and landed some good shots of her. I thought, okay, there we go. This is what I thought it was going to happen. All right. And then it stopped. And I don't know if it's a case of cardio. I don't know if it's a case of Kianzad making some necessary adjustments, because she started stuffing takedowns, framing off, getting into good boxing range, and winning the fight. I didn't see that happening because I thought, you know, a striker versus grappler, the one that can control where the fight goes is going to be the one that wins the fight in this situation against 2 top 15 women's bantamweights, for what that's worth. But it didn't really pan out the way I thought it was. And you know, Pannie Kianzad got the win, and it was a good win, but I didn't really see the path to victory. So yeah, I'm eating some crow on that one.
All right, good one there. Ben, what is your eating crow moment?
Well, we touched on it earlier in the show, but I had Geoff Neal over Stephen Thompson going into this past weekend. I didn't think he was going to knock him out, but I thought his power and the solid boxing game he has was going to be enough to give Thompson pause, because really, and I had to be reminded of this as the fight played out, and it only took about 2 minutes, but I was reminded of how hard it is to win a pure striking battle against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I mean, the only people that have really given him any pause, a prime Tyron Woodley, who also had the threat of the takedown and just stupid hitting power. Darren Till, who was 4 pounds overweight, and I still thought Thompson won that fight. He was getting some home cooking of both the actual food variety and the judging variety. And then Anthony Pettis, who landed a highlight reel kill shot after getting schooled for most of 2 rounds.
And a smart Matt Brown, too, who just decided, I'm going to take this guy down.
But, I mean, even that's like 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah. Yes,
like once Thompson really leveled up. But yeah, I guess I expected him to have lost more of a step. And, you know, perhaps if Neal's head coach had been there, he would have been able to make better adjustments in between rounds. But Thompson just, even though the rounds were individually competitive, this was mostly one-way traffic. He had Neal so frustrated, so just mesmerized. Like, there were just so many stretches where Neal just kind of kept waiting for the spot where you would normally move and throw, and just they never came, because Thompson is such a hard guy to prepare for. So yeah, I'm eating crow. I thought Thompson was going to be faded enough. I thought it was Neal's moment. It took me less than half a round to realize I was dead wrong, and I enjoyed the show the rest of the way. But that's 170.5 pounds of crow for me.
Well, a good one there. I'll say my eating crow is not really my fault. I'm going to blame my son because I was holding him, watching him while I was trying to score a lot of the event Saturday, and especially during the Deron Winn Antonio Arroyo fight. I had the lone dissenting media scorecard on MMA decisions, but I don't know if that's bad or not. It was not a good fight. I thought, just from what I can remember seeing in between my son like grabbing at my beard and throwing his bottle on the floor, was that Arroyo, while he was getting taken down a lot, kept getting back up and kept piecing up Deron Winn. And I kept seeing Wynn's head snapping back. I'm like, oh, he's winning this round. Guess not. So I am the one person who scored that fight for Arroyo on MMA decisions. And you know what? It is what it is. So that's my eating crow for the week. Now, let's move on to I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons, the greatest titled segment in all of media history. Jay, I want to begin with you this week. What is your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment?
Well, we've been talking about these events, so I'm going to leave them and talk about the last major MMA event this year, because there is one left, and it's not Bellator. Obviously, it's not PFL. We don't want to talk about one championship. Let's not. I would get mad about that. I don't want to. It is Rizin. Rizin is back for New Year's Eve. Awesome. They're not having a 3-day event because of COVID. They're just having one big gala event. Okay. All right. I understand. I appreciate it. And they are stuffing it to the gills. There's a couple title fights, which is very rare. Japanese MMA doesn't have a lot of championship bouts historically. The champions will take almost as many non-title showcase fights as they will defenses and whatever. So Kai Asakura is defending his belt against Kyoji Horiguchi, which there's a whole weird round robin about that. And Ayaka Hamasaki is she's fighting for a vacant belt against Miyu Yamamoto. Okay, fine. Let's see what happens. But the reason I am very surprised is because Takanori Gomi is coming back to competition this year in a fight. Notice I didn't say an MMA fight, because it's not. Do you remember a couple of years ago when that Floyd Mayweather guy went over to Japan and said, I'm going to fight this kickboxer, but I'm not going to let him kick me or do anything that he's good at. I'm just going to make him punch me. Tenshin Nasukawa. And he knocked the kid out in the first round with 3 knockdowns, and the kid was very upset, as he should be. Rizin's doing this again with Takanori Gomi. He is fighting Koji Tanaka, I believe is his name. He's a kickboxer. He's all right. I mean, he's like 28 via 14 or so. So he's not a superstar. So clearly, Floyd to undefeated Nasukawa to Takanori Gomi and Koji Tanaka is not the same quality here. But it is a specialty striking match. It is punching, no spinning strikes. Why don't they just call it boxing? Why do they call it a strikers match or a striking match, a strikers only match? Why don't they just say boxing? I don't understand. So I'm surprised that Takanori Gomi is going to hit somebody again that can hit him back. I mean, Gomi is he's 42 years young. He finally broke a horrible losing streak by extending the losing streak of Melvin Gillard a couple years ago. So Takanori Gomi's back this year, guys. I'm surprised about it. Oh, the pay-per-view is also half price, so it's only $25, and there's English commentary. Finally, English commentary.
Oh, yes.
So that's I'm surprised that Takanori Gomi's back.
Frank Trigg, he should be good. So,
all right. So it sounds like I'll be eating edibles and watching Rizin.
Give us a shout. We'll be here for it.
Yeah.
All right, sounds like a good time. So I'll go in and move into my I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons for the week. That comes courtesy of Greg Jackson, the famed MMA coach who, according to reports, is eyeing a bid for the Senate. Pretty interesting stuff here. Now, I always get a little nervous whenever people in MMA start talking politics because you know how we lean on this show. Scares the crap out of me. There also was a QAnon flag flying outside of Jackson Wink not that long ago, and we know about Mike Winklejohn, Greg Jackson's business partner there. So a little nervous, but he's running as an independent, apparently, according to those reports. So we'll see. He's Greg Jackson. For my personal interactions with him, always struck me as a nice, reasonable guy. Seems to be caring of others, seems to have a lot of good qualities. So we'll see what his campaign has to say. We'll see what platforms he runs on and whatnot, and see how much more of a cross-section into MMA politics can get before you realize sports and politics cannot be taken separately from one another. So that is my I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment. Ben, what is your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons this week?
Well, this will be the fourth week in a row in which my I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcon segment will take the form of a full-blown apology to a fighter that I have been wronging in my mind for a long time. So for the last 3 weeks, it's been Charles Oliveira, Jake Collier, Parker Porter. This week, it is Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo finally has an official win at bantamweight. He had some moral victories. I mean, his loss to Marlon Moraes in his debut last year had been questionable. He'd given Peter Yan about as hard a time as anybody else has in his undeserved title shot in July, but those are moral victories, and it takes 2 moral victories plus $850 to get you a replica belt from the UFC store online. Same for me as for him. By beating Marlon Vera on Saturday, he finally has a definitive win over a very good bantamweight to go along with the eyeball test, which, I mean, win or lose, has been saying that this guy looks like he is a top 10 bantamweight on talent and skill. He is hanging with top 10, top 5, top 1 guys, and he's not out of there. So he has a real win to go along with the eyeball test, but there were other good signs as well. I mean, he went back to using his leg kicks. I mean, his low kicks were one of the 2 or 3 most feared individual weapons in the entire sport during his heyday, and he finally went back to using them. His offensive wrestling and top game have always been unsung, underrated, underused parts of his skill set, and he sealed up the 3rd round just with a quick takedown and then a top control special, and just an incredibly intelligent veteran move from a guy who had to know that worst case, it might be 1 round to 1 going into that final round. I have been of the mind that this is just a terrible experiment for the entire time it's gone on, because I remember those years of him having a hard time making 145, pulling out of fights frequently, all the noise being about him maybe moving up to 155 as he got older. He came out at bantamweight looking like Skeletor. I said, this can't last. I've been wrong. I just have to get over the fact that he looks skeletal, but he seems to be fighting just fine against all logical expectations. So consider my mind changed, at least to the point that he deserves a chance to keep trying to do this and see how far it goes. I am surprised, Mr. Falcons.
You know what, Ben, I think you raised some good points there, so we can open it up to a slightly broader discussion here. Jose Aldo at bantamweight was something that universally we panned on this show. I know us three, Matt, I know you were of the same mind. I think we did something talking about that too, something officially, unless I'm confusing one of our regular conversations again, probably doing that. But still, we were all saying this was a horrible idea. We all remember him looking like death on the scale to make 145. So this dropped to 135. I remember the memes on Twitter and stuff, and we were just running roughshod with this. And we've been proven wrong to an extent like that, but I don't think we've been proven that wrong. Keep in mind, this was his first win out of 3 fights at bantamweight. So maybe this isn't his division. You know, if we're talking about he's hanging around the top 10 at bantamweight, well, he was doing that at featherweight. He was doing the same thing at featherweight with 10 more pounds, looking a little bit healthier, stepping on the scale. So I don't really know if this is where he belongs. At some point, Father Time is going to catch up and say, hey, you're not cutting this weight anymore. I think the lower he goes on the scale, there's going to be more opportunity or I should say a better chance of him just walking in the cage and just looking old, whether he be outpaced by his opponent, whether they just be faster or they just look more youthful, just more vigor to them, or his body simply just says the hell with this and quits right then and there. So fellas, Matt, I'll kick it to you, man. Do you think that Aldo is at home at bantamweight, or are you still throwing some question marks up there?
I still have some question marks, you know, for a lot of the reasons that you just said, because this was his first win. So what does he do to build on this? I want to see what he looks like the next time out. But part of me also believes that maybe it could be because maybe it's his body finally adjusting to the cut. You know, maybe he's finally gotten his cardio figured out at this weight. I'm not quite sure what it is yet. It's still too early for me to definitively say. But I do like the point that you said that, yeah, he was getting wins against top 10 competition, a weight class above. But, you know, these guys and these fighters, man, they're going to do whatever they think is best for them. And that means killing themselves for a scale before they go fight another human being less than 24 hours later. So it's just all ridiculous. But I hope that, you know, his body doesn't suffer any long-term effects from making this ridiculous weight cut. You know, I would prefer to see him at a class above, but that's just my opinion. But, you know, I want to see what he does in this next time out. He did look good, but how do you follow up your first win in this division?
Yeah, good point there, Jay. What do you think? Is 135 where Aldo belongs?
No, and I'm going to say something you guys aren't going to like, and I'm okay with it. Aldo is in a very similar situation to Junior Dos Santos fighting Cyril Gane, fighting a young up-and-comer in Chito Vera, who wasn't undefeated, but he had a lot of promise. He was on a long win streak at bantamweight. His loss in that whole run was to Song Yadong was at featherweight. So this was a talented guy. But before then, name a bad loss for Jose Aldo against a not super legit guy. Conor McGregor, Max Holloway, Volkanovski in a fight that he was gun shy, Marlon Moraes in a fight that the UFC actually thought he won because he got a title shot because of it, and Peter Yan in the fight he was doing well until he faded. Where's the bad win? Which is like Dos Santos, who lost to Cain Velasquez, Overeem, Stipe, Ngannou, Blades, and Rosenstrike. You know, all legit, all killers, top 5 guys. Every one of them was a top 5 or was a top 5 or would become a top 5 guy. So this was that performance Aldo needed to say, I'm still here. And because Aldo had some bad losses, you know, his knockout to Peter Yan, he looked tired and got beat up, especially in the last 2 rounds until they finally called it. The Max fights, you know, the second fight, he won maybe 1 round of 2 fights. And he really started getting pieced up and looked bad. The Volkanovski fight, he just couldn't seem to figure it out and pull the trigger. So I get why he left 145. He has 3 losses to the 2 guys who have held the belt after him. You know, there's just no path for a title shot. Like Junior Dos Santos will never fight for a UFC heavyweight title as long as any of the names that I mentioned are above him. So Aldo's move was to 135 to do that, because the other option is, oh, great, I got to fight Khabib. Oh boy, that's going to be fun. I always thought Aldo needed to go to 155 because his 145 cut was gnarly. It was a hard cut. So cutting down to 135, he looked fine. This time, he finally looked right at the weight class. He had good third round cardio. He was effective to take the back. He didn't have any issues holding onto the position, moving around, stopping the scramble. But he already lost to the champion in dominant fashion. So I feel like the only path for a top 5 title shot type of thing has to be in another weight class. And it damn sure ain't going to be flyweight. please don't be flyweight. Please don't be flyweight.
Yeah. And you know what? MMA fighters will try it. Like they will try it. So, all right, fellas, let's move things along here. The speed bag, where I get to flex my authority on you mofos. So we got 3 questions, 10 seconds on the clock for each of you to answer these questions in a round robin. So, Matt, I'm going to start with you. Deron Winn has a win at 195 pounds. Which division should he be fighting in?
Whichever division actually makes him a competitive fighter, because he didn't look any bit of that watching this fight. I think I dozed off a couple of times. So whichever.
I mean, why? Bridgerweight. Go up to Bridgerweight and deal with it there. Leave. I'm done. I'm good.
Ben.
I think he should go over to Fight Circus and like fight a 300-pound man with like a flyweight sitting on his shoulders.
Sold. God, sold.
I'm convinced. Ben had the right answer there. All right, One Championship is running a tape-delayed event on December 25th. Jay, you have 10 seconds to tell me why.
They hate everybody. Like, Christmas isn't just an American holiday. 2 billion people around the world, more people watch one than they do Christmas. But yeah, I don't know.
Dude, I don't celebrate Christmas, and I'm still not going to take time to watch this shit. Take my day to myself.
Matt.
There's your answer. There it is. The mic has been dropped.
I need my 10 seconds back. I demand my 10 seconds.
Interference.
The gentleman from Texas has
No, so well timed. It broke me. Can I get my 10 seconds back on the clock, please?
We'll start that clock again. There you go.
All right. The one thinks about their customers like Pop Copy does, because fuck them. That's why.
All right, Ben. The last question. I'll begin with you. Now that his contract is up, Anthony Pettis, does he leave the UFC to fight somewhere else?
Count me in with those that think he's actually going to sign back with the UFC. I know the signs are pointing towards Bellator joining his brother, and he even actually has a weight class there, unlike Sergio. But I think he signs with.
Guess Matt's going to let his time tick away.
Yep, I got none on this one. I got none.
Jay.
It's a no-brainer. He has to fight on Deron Winn's shoulders and Fight Circus.
Then he better cut the 155.
You got a master class right there. You got the feet, you got the hand. Oh my God.
All right. So,
man, Pettis' kicks coming from the height of Winn's shoulders.
I'm just saying.
That's deadly right there. That's like Ghetto Goro right there. Like, just you got like the 4.
He's gonna kick somebody in the rafters like that. All right, so I changed the clock to 30 seconds. I will answer all 3 questions in succession. The clock will begin after reading the first question. So Deron Winn won at 195 pounds this weekend. Which division should he realistically be fighting at instead? Like, just like try not to eat all the carbs, dude. Just try and just figure out where the scale takes you from there. One championship running a tape-delayed event on Christmas. I mean, hey, I have nothing to say about this. This is fucking stupid. Now that Pettis' contract is up, I think he's going to leave the UFC. I mean, this is the definition of a guy who's high paid and probably won't win a title. Keep in mind, UFC 223, they didn't want to pay him. So there we go. There we go. There we go. That is the speed back. So because there is no UFC card to break down this week, and there's no Bellator either, pretty much it's a week off for the majority of MMA fans here, at least if you're following like the bigger promotions. It is the end of 2020, so it is about time that we start our end of year discussion. So instead of having one like 45-minute segment at the end of our hour and a half long show, we're going to just attach a few minutes on to the next several. So we're going to start off with talking about who our breakout fighter of the year is. So Ben, I'll let you lead the discussion on this one. Who was your breakout fighter for 2020?
I mean, there were a bunch of great candidates. Obviously, the landscape of the sport being what it is, plenty of previously unknown fighters had a chance to debut on the biggest stage, and it was all about first impressions. And it might be a different conversation if Khaos Williams had notched another 30-second knockout on Saturday, but it's got to be Kevin Holland. Holland became just the third fighter in the modern history of the UFC to win 5 fights in a calendar year. And with the exception of, one of those being a late replacement opponent, it represented kind of a logical progression up the ranks, ending with a win over a top 15 contender in Jacare Souza. And more importantly, he has improved as a fighter throughout this. He's not the inconsistent guy he used to be. You can't win 5 straight fights at this level if you have terrible fight IQ, terrible conditioning, huge holes in your game. Holland is a much better fighter than he was 2 years ago. And he may be the fighter who has benefited the most from empty arena MMA. Being able to hear the wild stuff this dude says, it's made him a hero to me. To have like Jacare Souza standing over you in your guard and to look up at him and laugh and said, I had a dream about this last night. Oh, give me more of this man. I want nothing but silent, empty arena Kevin Holland 5 times next year. He's my breakout fighter of the year.
It's hard to argue with that. Anyone want to put a case against Kevin Holland for that? Or I should say in favor of someone else?
I guess I'll take a shot at it, even though I agree that it is Kevin Holland, but I'll take a shot. How about one person who just stormed the UFC and ran headlines and just Khamzat Chimaev? Come on.
Oh, Lauren Murphy? That's a good one. That's a good point.
Yeah, exactly right. No, she's definitely on my honorable mention. But Khamzat Chimaev, man, I'm going with him because this man had 3 fights this year. Nobody heard of this man before, June, July. And all of a sudden, he's like the hottest thing in MMA. And, having 2 fights in back-to-back weeks, different weight classes, as they announced him as Habib 2.0 as he's walking out for his first UFC fight. And I was like, what the fuck kind of comparison is that? And then I was like, oh, he did it again the next week. Oh, okay. Maybe this guy's got some juice. So I like the momentum that he built this year. And I cannot wait to see what he does with it this next coming year, from being an unknown to fighting a top 3 guy in his 4th fight is pretty damn impressive.
Definitely a good pick there. I mean, that's probably the popular vote right there. But I'd say Kevin Holland wins the Electoral College. Jay, who do you want to throw a case for? Or are you siding with either Chimaev or Holland here?
Well, I thought Lauren Murphy was – no, I mean, really, I like Murphy. She did good things. She's a title challenger now. Great. Congratulations. 3-0 in the year. That's good. That's an impressive year over a fighter that didn't – her claim to fame was her coach literally not knowing her name. But in this case, I'm going to go with Kevin Holland, and it's surprisingly close. I mean, I would expect it for Sherdog. We're going to be running one of these on the Sherdog forums. I am expecting that Khamzat Chimaev is going to win that. And there is some data to back that up. On Sherdog Fight Finder, one of the most popular viewed profiles since he made his debut is far and away Chimaev. Like it's shocking how many people check this guy out to find out who is this guy, what has he done, and what has he done before, all these kind of information. He is a much more heavily viewed fighter than Kevin Holland. But what Holland has done in the cage is nothing short of spectacular. Like, I can't give him a bad performance this year on top of winning 5 fights, on top of beating 4 respectable names and a replacement that came in the day before the fight, I think, is what Charlie and Tiburos came in. So it's something different. And it's something different when you look at the achievements of the other fighters that have gone on. Anthony Hernandez is a legit fighter. Darren Stewart is the Contender Series gatekeeper. Seriously, look at his record sometime. He is the ultimate guy to fight the newcomer from Contender Series. Joaquin Buckley, the fight after he got knocked out by Kevin Holland, he did that thing that you guys saw a couple times on like a GIF, that Buckley thing, I don't know, whatever. And then doing that to Jacare Souza, doing that to him. It was the kind of thing where you knew him. I knew of him. I had seen him fight. He strung a couple wins together. His UFC debut was against Thiago Santos on short notice, and he gave a good showing. But this is the kind of thing where he goes from a guy who Dana openly dumps on, Big Mouth or whatever, to a guy who is now probably a win away from a title shot. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Kevin Holland.
Yeah, hard to argue against either one of those names. I mean, Chimaev for the pure metrics, just the numbers that he draws, and Holland for, the actual in cage, what he's been able to do, like against ranked fighters. So, hard to deviate from that. I'm going to throw a surprise pick out there for my breakout fighter of the year. And really, I think just very recently, like very, very recently, this name came in mind to be in this category. Alex K. Lee, breakout fighter of the year. So let's move on here. So our final topic for the evening here. Who's your comeback fighter of 2020?
This is an interesting thing to look at, because you wonder, should a fighter be legit, have already broken out and then go away for a while and then come back? Like, you can think of a fighter who my pick, and I'm actually still chewing on it, I might change my vote when it comes down to it, currently is Sean Strickland, because of what he came back from. Now, Sean Strickland wasn't a household name, wasn't a pay-per-view name, wasn't a title challenger, wasn't a top blah blah rank guy. But what he went through to literally come back to the UFC, this is a guy who was on the shelf for a couple of years because he had a motorcycle accident where he wasn't going to walk again. Like, this is a guy who the doctor said, you're probably going to have to get used to a wheelchair. And he's like, no, screw that. I'm going to do this and I'm going to fight again. And the doctor's like, yeah, that ain't happening. And 2 years later, he comes back. He comes back this year, this October, and he knocked out, he beat up Jack Marshman in a way that was both entertaining and spectacular. The whole, come on, why won't you go down? Punching the guy in the face, and the guy won't fall down, and he's yelling at him, come on, I hit you with everything I had. And then comes back 2 weeks later and pieces up Brendan Allen. This is a guy who came back from a career that was over. And he did that to those guys. I think he won it for me this year.
Let me unmute that mic. I'm going to jump a little bit out of turn here to throw mine out there. Robert Whitaker will be my comeback fighter of the year. Now, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to lead to much continued success for him, considering what's going on in the middleweight title picture right now with the champion who has no reason to face him again, moving up to 205 to fight. But we're talking about a guy who we saw get iced by Israel Adesanya, just absolutely iced. And it was fair to question what he had left in him, considering the nature of that knockout where he lost his belt, and the fact that he went from 2 5-round wars with Yoel Romero that I'm sure have lasting damage on him, in addition to the continued injury woes. So for him to come back in 2020, get a quality win over Darren Till in an exciting fight, and then to go out there and absolutely run through Jared Cannonier in a spectacular performance, and reestablish himself as one of the absolute best people on the planet at 185 pounds, means a whole lot. Robert Whitaker, I think, makes a strong case for comeback fighter of the year.
So I guess I'll go with mine. And it's a little bit different because it's not necessarily like a guy that's coming off of a series of losses or anything, but it's a guy that really took a jump back into the top of the division and performed well beyond expectations for me. And I'm talking about Charles Oliveira. This is a guy that looked like the world's best in his division in his last fight. And to do that, considering, you know, not only is it Tony Ferguson, but look at the guy's record. The man has 8 losses. The guy looked like an undefeated fighter in there against Tony Ferguson. So he had 2 fights this year. Obviously, the first one was against Kevin Lee. To really take a step up to the upper echelon of the division and perform like that against both of those guys like he did, like that's got to be worth something, worth mentioning at the end of the year stuff. And I'm sliding him into this category.
Outstanding.
It's damn good.
My call was actually the same as Jay's. Like, I voted for Sean Strickland in the Sherdog staff poll. So I will just instead jump in for Brian Ortega. There is something to be said for taking the worst loss of your career and maybe the worst beatdown in a high-level fight in all of 2018 against Max Holloway, coming back 22 months later, almost 2 full years, and following up the worst loss of your career with the best win of your career. He completely outclassed Chan Sung Jung, the Korean zombie, for 5 rounds, and just reminded us that this was a comeback of the most literal variety. And it wasn't like Sean Strickland, like where, you know, it was possible to even forget he was still on roster, but it was like, oh man, you know, will Ortega ever be the same again? You know, will he ever be in the title picture again? He reaffirmed he is absolutely in the title picture, and on the right night, you know, might be able to beat almost any 145-pounder on earth.
Definitely a good pick right there for comeback fighter of the year. So, so before we wrap things up, because we've essentially concluded the show for the evening, first weekend in 24 weeks without a UFC card. We've got Christmas is this weekend, right? Or is this like Friday or something? I grew up not celebrating holidays, so I'm always kind of clueless to when things are going on here.
It's not Christmas for us. It's one championship day.
Oh, that's true. That's true. It's one championship day. So, so Jay, what are you going to do for one championship day, or what are you going to do without the UFC for the first weekend since the day before forever?
It's going to sound so bad. I'm going to be covering one championship. And I hate everything about it. I do. I'm on the schedule for Thursday, and I'll be here for it. But at least the one championship has the kindness to have pre-recorded this event in the past. So these aren't live fights. So they decided to hold them and save them for us because they were so spectacular that they wanted us to gather all of our friends.
They're just sitting under the tree. You want to go shake the box right now.
And they want to just sit,
throw
they
it in
want
the
to
trash.
sit there with our family and plug into the computer or the TV and throw on these one championship fights that are headlined by. Hold on.
I can't tell whether Jay is checking for dramatic effect or because he really doesn't know.
We don't actually have any fights on the Sherdog Fight Finder right now. So headlined by TBA versus TBD. I am here for it. But really, this weekend,
right there.
This weekend, man, I have a couple articles to write out, probably a couple year-end pieces, but I'm going to finally, after how long? I don't know how long it's been out for, check out this whole cyberpunk thing because I've heard it's pretty fun.
I mean, I think one having their card on Christmas it's just showing you what they've been trying to say all along. It's Chachu's birthday, if you follow my drift. So Ben, what are you planning on doing this weekend?
This is actually the time of year I look forward to the most because while I enjoy talking about the fights that happened a week ago with y'all, my actual passion is writing about the fights that happened 15 years ago. I'm a historian and storyteller at heart, and with nothing coming up ahead, I get to catch up on a lot of the historical pieces, retrospectives, historical infographics that are really the labor of love for me. The 6-figure contract is nice, but why I'm really in the MMA media space is wanting to make Dana's top 10 and writing historical pieces. So I'll be doing that all week.
All right, and Matt, what are you planning on this UFC free weekend?
I mean, we're gonna do a socially distanced thing at my brother's house and little white elephant thing, and that's about it. I will be watching some basketball, I'm sure. So there's things to, keep me occupied, but I'm really not going to miss the UFC this weekend. Not really. I mean, one is having a thing, I guess. So I guess I'll check it out at some point, maybe.
Probably
not too
not
excited about it though, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I think this weekend without the UFC, it's actually my son's birthday, his first birthday. So I'll be hanging out with the little guy. He'll be smashing a cake and he'll be making a mess and high on sugar. So wish me luck. Other than that, I bought a couple of games. Like I'm like the most casual gamer. I get the games like months after they released and buy them used or something. And I got Days Gone, which I really, really like so far, and Mortal Kombat 11. So I'll be playing those. Work for my day job is slowed to a crawl, so nothing to do there. I don't think I have an MMA on point script to write. If so, cool. I'll do it. I'll knock it out. I ain't got nothing else to do this weekend. Yeah, so it's just gonna be family time, man. I got my whiskey, which I've been sipping on throughout the entire broadcast. Yeah, got an 1/8 ounce and I'm good, man. So
every time I got my whiskey, that's everything.
Hey, I'm straight, fam. I'm good out here. I don't need anything else. But some jackass tried to break in my car over the weekend, so I need to get the window repaired. So that's really it. That's the most exciting thing I've got going on. Yeah, so I'm just guarding the house with machetes and whatnot, and yeah. So I guess that's gonna do it for this edition of Unleash. Big thank you to my good friend Matthew Wells for joining the show again. Always welcome to come on whenever. Yeah, I mean we're going to see us on the Body Lock videos if you haven't already watched a lot of those. So we've got some stuff cooking. We're going to try to record some stuff tonight for that. So he's Ben Duffy and he's Jay Petrie. You can find their work on Sherdog.com, and Matt, you can find his work alongside me on the Body Lock. All my other stuff, MMA on point. Karate Combat's off for the season, so next season we'll be revving things up, and I'll keep you guys posted on what that's looking like and what sort of content I'll be providing that they actually will use this time around. So well, anyway, so like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Ben, hit that sound for me one more time. All right. Stay beautiful. Stay positive. Stay socially distanced, protecting your families. Wear your mask. And throughout it all, sip your whiskey and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace. Black people got superpowers. What?